Turn my volume up. I will turn y'all's volume up. And greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the inn of Planar Crossroads. Oh, finally, we get back on a chat. It's been forever, it feels like. It feels like forever. Ah, Kane, you show up just in time.
It's Kane. Kane is the one who shows up right after we start now.
How do you fucking do, ladies and gentlemen? How are you doing today?
That's right. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, spoilers now, ladies and gentlemen. This is an adult podcast that may contain adult language. You have been ineffectively warned.
Thanks,
Yeah, I'm working on it, okay? I try to swear less. I'm very bad at it.
I'm very bad at swearing less.
Yes,
I am very good at swearing more.
very good at swearing in Russian accent, yes.
All right. Well, I don't have any particular announcements for this time. We're still trying to work out, I will say we're still trying to work out a recording schedule and for our games. We may change things up a little bit, try to make it a little easier for people, but we'll see. We'll just have to see how that goes. But we will try to be putting out at least some kind of content here in February. I don't have any other specific announcements. Tommy, you got anything going on before we start our chat?
I do. My channel actually is giving away not one, not two, but basically two, unless you want to be super awesome and become a high-tier patron, spots in a new system that I'm very happy to, as much as I love Legacy Pathfinder, I'm very happy to like step this way and do something else for a little while. Final Fantasy D20.
Mm-hmm.
As I've been telling my friends, if you'd like to be a Ronso, if you'd like to have a Gunblade and anime hair, or all three, you can do it. The system's actually really cool. Like, I remember when one of my patrons showed me it, it was like 4 hours of, I can do this? Okay. Did this Final Fantasy Tactics crappy class make it? Yeah, it did. And just kind of like diving through, because it's probably the most robust, like well cared for third-party content that I've ever seen. It's not just like, here's a book, go. It gets regular updates, like even like present day. And I'm definitely super stoked to, once my Sunday night game gets done, we're going to be grabbing a couple other people to like reinforce the patron game. And then it's also serving as a try before you buy. Because I realize that that's a pretty big commitment for somebody to be like, hey, GM Pathfinder for you. So for those of us who are like, maybe I don't want to spend that kind of money, what is it really for me? This is a good way to like get it on the ground floor. And Adam will put a link in the description to my video with me with a Kupo.
Of course I will. But I do have to say, mucho compliments on the thumbnail, man. I mean, the Moogle little top knob, yeah. Nice.
I spent like 4 hours trying to put cloud hair on myself, and it just looks so bad every time. Okay. So I'm like, yeah, no, we're doing the easy one. Poof, pop, boop, boop, done.
I actually, you made a comment about how I'll reshare this 10 years later, and I was like, I actually went into Facebook and tried to program something for 10 years from then to tag you in a post saying, you said to share it 10 years later, but it didn't work. So they don't go out that far. Facebook.
Thanks, Zuckerberg.
All right. Well, we've had a little bit of time to introduce that. We will have a link in the description for that giveaway for them. And yeah, I mean, I'd play in Final Fantasy as well. I like Final Fantasy games.
Yeah,
Tactics.
I should apply for that game. I don't play much Final Fantasy, but I'm basically a patron.
Yeah.
And the classes are all basically the same too. Like the vanilla fighter in Final Fantasy D20 is just the two-handed fighter archetype with like some brawler stuff in it. So like if you play Pathfinder, you know how it works. You're just, now you have the flavor of your childhood nostalgia if you're Tommy.
Yeah.
So is this Final Fantasy D20 system that they're developing, or that they have developed, is very similar to Legacy Pathfinder and like 3.5 D&D?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just ffd20.com will get you there, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. It's a 3.5 D20 based everything. It's, if you've played 3.5, you've played this. It's just different flavor. One thing that I will say about it that's really cool is, because it's Final Fantasy, of course, non-fancy magic is gone.
Yes.
That is not how the casters function. It's an MP system, because it had to be, because that's how it works.
Down with the Vancian system. Okay.
While we're on this, just because I found the community for it forever ago, Naruto D20 has been going on for 20 years and still has an active
Oh
Discord
my
server.
gosh.
That's because that anime's been going on for 20 years.
Shut up. You know how old this is? Oh. I
just
read
saying.
I read the Naruto manga when it came out in America for the first time.
I'm just saying,
Golly.
they have like 1,000-page core rulebook,
Good God.
and they
Well
have
done,
splat
Naruto.
books, and they have tons of splat books on in addition past that core rulebook, and they still have an active Discord.
I want to
I
be
do not
me
think-
a sound ninja. That sounds hype as shit.
You would just
that many people like
beatbox.
Naruto. Nice.
You'd beatbox all your sound attacks. All right. We're doing a long intro for this little character conversion thing.
As we do.
Because we haven't talked in so long.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to get into that character conversion thing right now because that's what we're doing. That's kind of what we're doing right now. In lieu of any kind of talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, we are talking about character conversions to any type of system, just ideas and inspirations. And we're going to be doing a song this time, The Doors, and their song, Riders on the Storm.
I was thinking for this, or maybe next week we'll do it. We could pick a bunch of different songs. Like we could each pick a song, because I don't know that like one song requires 4 people to convert one character.
I mean, this song is 7 minutes long, though.
Yeah, but it's just the same verse over and over again.
Hey,
I've never heard this song before.
I got a
That's
whole
spoiler.
adventure path
Who's
out of
now?
this song. So I mean, I
Okay.
don't know what you guys are doing. Okay, so does anybody have character ideas that they want to do before we go into like something a longer discussion? Because Levi and I do that.
Let's talk about the song specifically before we do anything else, so that the many people, I should the 12 people who watch this video who don't have any idea what Riders on the Storm is, have a better idea of what it is we're talking about.
Okay. Riders on the Storm. Riders on the Storm is a song by The Doors. I'm not sure when this one came out. I actually didn't read. Oh, there we go. Its genre is psychedelic rock, and blues. I'll actually put a link in the description to this particular. It's lyricsfreak.com, and they've got it. It came in 1965, it looks like. So right there in the height of the 60s. Mm-hmm.
This is right about when Adam was born.
Oh, you know I'm not that. Well, I assume you know I'm not.
Not by that long.
Yeah. Okay.
Adam's only like 5 years older than me.
Yeah.
You wouldn't tell from our demeanor, but that's
Well,
what
that's what happens when you have like an anarchist from St. Louis, Missouri, and a preacher from Arkansas.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right.
You do.
So the song itself is really we will probably put a link also to the song itself in the description so you can hear it. It does have this sound, this tone. They do great incorporation of the sound of rain as an intro to the song, and then they start talking about Riders on the Storm and so on and so forth. It's worth a listen, even if you only listen to it once, which I don't know why you would only listen to it once, but you can.
Because you don't like psychedelic rock?
Yeah.
It's a bad genre of music?
Well, I can't argue that it's not the best, but this particular song is good, in my opinion. But that is just my opinion.
I do like Riders on the Storm, but I feel like I hear it much more often used as a sample in hip-hop music than I do as the actual song by The Doors.
Well, that's hip-hop music fault. That's not the Doors' fault.
Wow. I mean, sampling is a staple of all hip-hop music.
Thank you, Elmer Fudd, for teaching us about hip hop today.
Yeah, that's more Porky Pig.
No,
that's
Porky
all,
Pig.
folks.
Porky Pig would be hip 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 hip.
Hippity hip.
There's a very specific stutter for Porky Pig.
Oh, good to know. But so does anybody have a character that they'd like to go into with the song?
Well, you had talked initially about doing an encounter, and the first thing that came to mind when you mentioned that was, sort of like bandits or highwaymen. That was the first thing that came to mind, was Riders on the Storm. And I suppose if you wanted to take it into a more like fantasy-oriented, literal interpretation, you would introduce aspects of the storm into it, and it could be like pale riders on horses made of air, like that appear with these like this like portentous storm effect. Like the storm would show up, and then they would ride through town and like, you know, pillage and raid and set fire to buildings, and like the entirety of the encounter would occur as the storm passed overhead, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think about it?
Well, there's kind of like 5 or 6 different levels that we could attack this from, huh? From one hand, you have the Stormlord Prestige class from 3.5 / the horse or whatever animal companion of your choice with the air or storm template, some kind of like nature themed druid. That's like all of them are like a storm themed druid to fire lightning at people. But then on the other hand, it being, not to blow everyone's mind here, but I think this song may have a deeper meaning than Riders on the Storm. And so when we think about that in the tabletop setting, one has to wonder where line blurs into the realm of like the esoteric, the psychic, the psychedelic, and how that has literal manifesting will kill you dead kind of stuff. For example, like a nightmare dragon or something like that, or any of the creepy monsters in the occult adventure books could pretty easily be incorporated into any psychedelic rock song from the 60s, I suppose.
Any psychedelic rock. You can do Animate Dream.
I come into this and I was like, I'm going to do this. Here we go. Okay, Storm, Rider, Sleipnir, and Vikings, and Shocking Grasp. Yes. But there's a lot of other like angles again one can attack this song from.
After you mentioned the Storm Druid, that actually makes me think of like if you were to sort of design them as like a rival faction, it would be a Storm Druid, which I really like the idea of, Tommy. Who sort of like facilitates the cover under which the rest of that, like the riders of the storm, assail or attack from.
The druid and his like Nuclavy that he's gonna throw at people.
Yeah, precisely.
Fun fact: that's getting a mini in Champions of Balance, the next Pathfinder mini set that's coming out. Oh. I looked at it. That was the first one I saw. I'm like, I remember that from our Around the Hearth about encounters. That's a Nuclavy. It's really good.
Like on a port town, like this thick, like red or purple fog rolls in off the sea, and from like the port waters, from the bay, emerges like this cavalry of Nuclavy that just lay waste to the town at the like sort of riding ahead of this storm druid. Ooh. I like that. I think that sounds really cool.
It's sweet. Now, are the Nuclavy immune to acid? That's the one thing, and that's another whole different level. It's like psychedelic rocket.
The Nuclavy dropping acid all the time. The whole that red.
It's Storm of Vengeance, acid rain.
Red smoke. Yeah, red smoke. Sure.
This is where you break out your book of Vile Darkness and you teach your friends all about the drugs of the game.
Well, I mean, you know, that smoke isn't necessarily red. It's called the red smoke because it makes your eyes red type thing. You know?
Yeah.
It's immune to disease and poison, but for the purposes of this encounter, they could be immune to acid. You're the DM.
Yeah.
Well, technically, drugs are poison.
Boom. It's immune to all the shrooms that are raining from the sky.
It's the only one who breathes in this fog who doesn't get high.
So that's actually not the worst way to kill people.
Psychedelic fog.
Like I have an in-person group on Sundays, and one of my druid he's just kind of playing for lols, and on his character sheet he wrote likes conservation, terrorism, and drugs. And this kid, all he wants to do is find drugs in this world. And so what do? We weaponize them to throw at the bad guys. Turns out it's a pretty good way. Yeah, exactly. And when the bad guys are taking huge negs because they're tripping out, and here comes my Duskblade step, turn, swing. It's right. It is a very effective way to stop a lot of things, and it also makes a pretty good narrative arc. If you, the GM, are making, I don't know the name of any of the drugs in 3.5 and Pathfinder, but some kind of hallucinogenic something rain from the sky onto the town, and everyone has failed their saves and is hallucinating in the streets as the Necklavi ride through, swords in hand, and
Golden Ash, Sleepy Time Tree, Sleepy Time Tea, certain versions of strange fluids,
Blood Brush,
Blood Brush, yeah.
from beginnings and endings.
I feel like I should be more familiar with Blood Brush. I've forgotten.
Yeah. So those are good ideas. What about you, Levi? What do you think?
So I don't have anything as cool. I just instantly read there's a killer on the road. His brain is squirming like a toad, and I just imagine a set of psychic toads who hop in and take over people's brains.
Oh, psychic.
Hypno toad.
Isn't that like a sovereign worm?
Or a mind sliver mole, or a what is it called? A wolf in sheep's clothing.
Wolf in sheep's clothing doesn't control people, does it?
It doesn't control
Not exactly.
People.
It's more like the zombie.
Oh yeah, no, it's not. You're right.
Zombie antiviruses.
Cordyceps.
It sounds a lot like what you're talking about. Sounds a lot like how mind flayers reproduce. They get the tadpoles.
Oh, the void mine. I played a void mine before. It is weird.
I will be fighting one in my in-person game very soon. You guys will have to help me. I don't know how it works, but I learned that they'll put minnows in my people's heads, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, to describe very quickly how a void mine works, mind flayers, or most illithids, reproduce by sucking out the brains of a host and eating that up, because they're basically an intellect of ours. They're gross little squid people, and then they fill the empty skull cavity with psionic ooze, and into that psionic ooze they birth their little spawn, and that spawn grows inside the skull cavity of the void spawn, and whilst it is growing, the void spawn is in control of the progenitor illithid, so the one who spawned into it with the psionic ooze. And when the illithid that is spawned inside the skull cavity becomes mature, it bursts forth from the front of the facial part of the skull, out of the nasal cavity and the bottom of the ocular cavities, to basically form the pathways for the illithid face tentacles. And then the pseudopod's mouth is underneath that, where the original humanoid's mouth opening is.
Yep.
I've learned something today.
That's spooky.
I'm pretty sure that's in maybe Book of Vile Darkness for 3.5. I don't know.
It should also be in there.
Well,
yeah, it's vile and dark.
Well, it does in fact seem vile and dark.
They play around with the lore. Dungeons and Dragons plays around with its lore, so that's probably one of the older Mind Flayer ones, illithid ones from that era of 3.5.
I will be right back.
Okay, fine.
But yeah.
So, not necessarily hypnotoads, but
honestly, yeah, full just Mind Flayer infestation starting sounds more fun.
Fair enough. All right. So
now I'm just looking at all the toads that exist. There are many. There are so many toads.
Well. Okay, any other remarks before I go into the adventure path idea?
The whole AP for a 7 minute song.
Yeah, whole AP from a 7-minute song. Now I will need some help
Okay,
on a few
fair.
parts. So, the Riders on the Storm, I actually submit that for like a full adventure path, that's actually referring to the players. The Riders on the Storm is how you introduce the players. You know, you do the cinematic description of it's raining, it's dark, and you're coming in and you're riding into town soaking wet. You've had to travel through this storm to get to where you're going to this town. You can have them coming there from being perhaps called about the killer on the road, and perhaps they've been called to take care of that. Or I think it's a bit more thematic if they've come to that town just wandering through. If you get kind of some wanderers coming in, and they kind of ride in on the storm, and they hear about this killer on the road, or perhaps they see someone pick up somebody that was on the road, because it talks about if you give this man a ride, sweet memory will die. Killer on the road. So they see somebody pick that person up, and this person comes into town. Everybody in the town, when that person gets there, they go really quiet because they see who it's with, and this person that they're with is, you could go with specter or ghost or vengeful spirit, or you could go with anything in there. But when this person arrives in the town with this hitchhiker, they are not shunned, but everybody just gives them what they want and then leaves. They don't talk to them, they don't interact. And it'd be really good if the PCs saw that this NPC was friendly and, you know, perhaps a traveling merchant that had good things to sell, but no one came around while this person was near, this person they picked up. And that's one way you can get that stuff going on in there. If we're kind of working down through the song, Riders on the Storm, into this house we're born, into this world we're thrown. There's a few ways you could go with that. Depending on your PCs and how you get their backstories in, you could have it either where they're might be related to this specter that is haunting the road, or perhaps this whole thing has a different kind of feel to it. I did this once with a town that I trapped my PCs in, called Lacrimos, or Lacrimia, one of those names. And they were kind of stuck in a loop that they couldn't leave the town, and that might be an interesting way to keep them here until they get to solve whatever this is in the AP. But that's an option for that. If you're playing this in a long game, like if this is a scenario that you're leading up to, you might have it where the specter is not a specter at all. It's a dog, like the dog without a bone. It follows that person. It follows the people on the road instead. It just kind of trots behind him, similar to a black dog type of legend, to go with a modern legend that's around. So that's an option too. You could, the actor out alone thing. Maybe you could throw in an NPC, an odd off the wall NPC that's an out of work actor or something like that. At the out of work bard or something would be good. I'm not sure what to do with the take a holiday or let the children play necessarily. That may be something, I don't know, maybe the actor says that as part of his routine. But for the squirming like a toad, I think it would be good to incorporate kind of what Levi was saying, and have the, not necessarily mind controlling toads, but theme your theme your minor adversaries around that. Boggards and some nasty Gripply. Those would be fun to make bad guys. And stuff like that might be something, since it's so wet around this area. It might be good to incorporate that type of amphibious nature. Maybe it didn't used to be so swampy around here, but because it rains so much now, it is. So.
And then suddenly all the boggards see it as home, and here they come, and
Yeah.
and they've brought all their frog familiars that, as of Wilderness Origins, was the book. Yeah, there's a familiar archetype that turns your familiar into a parasite that can into people's heads.
Ugh.
So
Ooh.
yeah, I don't know if it's good or not, but I know it exists.
Well, it's good for this. That works out
It's definitely
really
it's
good.
very thematic for the cult of the Hypno Toad, who in Pathfinder we refer to as Gogunta, I believe. But I also like the idea of the dog too. There's a lot of, ever since Holmes and the Hound of the Baskervilles and all the way up to present day, there's a lot of like low to mid CR dog like monsters that are scary and like iconically so. For example, like the Yeth Hound.
Well, I mean, the Grim is hardly a new hound figure of like Grim Portent. I mean, like, yeah, literally Grim Portent.
Yeah. And you can make it like, because of this being something that maybe the town knows about, this is a local thing that happens at this place. This place is haunted, this road. So they want the trade, but they can't get the trade if you keep losing traders along the road. Now, you could go with the mystical aspect, or you could go with like the Raiders, instead of Riders on the Storm, Raiders on the Storm with Kane. You could go with them using that as a smokescreen. Like, this dog is just trained. They've got a lot of trained dogs that they leave on the road, and they use it as kind of a smokescreen. They don't like to attack it unless it's really foggy, or they've got cover via the clouds and the storms. So that might be an avenue of working in. If you're in a low magic setting, or even if you're in a no magic setting, you could work it in that way. Because just because you're in a no magic setting doesn't mean that people won't believe in supernatural stuff. So.
Matter of fact, I think they'd be more apt to believe in the supernatural, because in the no magic setting, the supernatural like does not exist. So the like NPC imagination gap that is normally filled like, oh yeah, that's a level 1 abjuration spell and it does that cha 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 cha, now must be filled by things like this.
Well, I mean, that's our setting. Like, that's where all these folk myths come from. There's people on the road, like, you see a dog on the road, and like a bunch of people see a dog on the road right before they're attacked by bandits, and suddenly dogs are a bad omen.
Yeah. It didn't have anything to do with, like, you know, there being a bunch of dogs around. Yeah. So statistically. But,
or just like the bandits have a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of them has that ranger level.
This is what happens when you and everyone you know is illiterate.
I do like I do want to try and incorporate into this somehow, girl, you gotta love your man and take him by the hand. That idea that it says the world depends on you, our life will never end. Gonna love your man. It would be interesting, and this is, I like to lean on the kind of, I'm Lovecraftian. I like to lean on the kind of out there type stuff of not low magic setting when it comes to freaking out and doing weird stuff with all the creatures. So I think it would be interesting if whatever you want to go with, whether it's a vengeful spirit, whether it's just a horror or something like that, that's not necessarily understood by the town anymore, that it would have a kind of connection to not necessarily a young woman, but a woman in the town, and that desire for care and love being sought but not received. Not necessarily a spurned lover, but perhaps a love that never got to happen type thing or something like that. It also, with Our Life Will Never End, does kind of lead itself to perhaps being one of those situations where you can't leave the town or the area is hard to leave, because every time you try to leave you end up back at the town. You see the dog and you're like, oh, we must be on the road again, and the dog kind of trots behind you, and you end up in the fog, you end up somehow turned around back at town or something along those lines. But that's kind of my adventure path, loose idea.
He's very proud of trapping us in that town with that nightmare.
I just think it fits this. You don't have to do it every time.
Yeah. The you gotta love your man, the Our Love Will Never End thing. When you mention that, the first thing I think of is a vampire, maybe? Or a lich that I had planned on putting in a game I was gonna run, where his phylactery was his wife's wedding band, and inscribed inside the wedding band it says, "My heart, my soul."
Oh, that's really good. That's really good.
It's not bad.
Yeah, the vampire actually fits this pretty well. Because traditional vampires, they get to change. They can do the fog thing.
Mm-hmm.
They get to change into a dog, if you're going with Bram Stoker.
A wolf or a swarm of rats or bats.
Or you could flavor it a toad, to a swarm of a plague or swarm of toads.
A plague of toads is the correct word.
A plague of toads with mind control abilities, considering it's a vampire.
Because it's vampire. Yeah. Fair.
Blood-sucking hypno-toad.
I feel like the swamp vampire would turn into toads before it would turn into rats.
Yeah.
Seems to only make sense to me.
Yeah. I like that a lot more. I like that a lot more than the vengeful spirit thing.
Oh, okay.
It does take a very tropey encounter that I think we've all used at some point or recently had to deal with. I'm a vampire that's too strong to deal with, but then like reflavor it to come at you as something else that like not only that you don't expect him, oh, he's a vampire, but also now suddenly the thing that's been
what level were you when you fought the vampire, Tommy?
4 levels
Not
under
enough.
it. In a world where no one hits it until the end of the session, and then Tommy
Oh no,
crits it,
this
happens
is too strong for the vampire when you were 5th level, and I made you fight vampires, and you decimated the encounter I ran.
Yeah, but the numbers are more tightly bound in 2E.
They are. They really are.
Well,
I think we did very well, all things considered, but it was very hard.
So, I just want to say for vampire toads, I want the end of their tongue to be like a blood-sucking tooth.
Oh.
A whole plague of them. Oh, that's why they don't tie it to like a vampire, because they think it's some kind of creature with all these different teeth, because there's lots of bite marks all over it instead of 2
The one
on the neck.
Yeah, the
Ick. Gross.
You're
Like,
welcome,
isn't
Kane.
that-
Well, we know we've achieved something good when Kane's like, Nick, gross, no. So,
Yeah, you've upset my stomach while I'm eating.
oh,
Your
we all know
$20
it won't
McDonald's.
last.
It's my $30 Five Guys and fries.
Oh, fair. Oh man,
Oh,
had 5 Guys a few weeks ago, paid like $11 for it. Oh my, Canada. Oh Canada.
oh, Canada. All right,
Oh, it's so good though.
Yeah.
it's $11 a good. All right. You guys got any more remarks about this particular one?
I feel like it's like, no matter who looks at this, like every different creative someone or other who takes a looks. I'm so good with English today, but like were to come at something like this, and actually it's kind of an interesting way to build encounters as well, because I've never done anything like this, and everyone will interpret it differently, right? Because that's how open, especially the psychedelic rock of the 60s is. It's like no 2 GMs will, as we've seen, interpret this the same way, and it's a pretty interesting way to build encounters. It's good, like, God, I'm gonna keep just making all these psychedelic rock jokes, but it really opens your mind. But it does though, because it's an entirely different creative something or other.
You'll eventually
Do I
stop when I
have-
keep doing.
Yeah, I don't want to drum kit anymore, Adam.
Do I? I can get one more out of this. What year was this song put out? The YouTube video I'm looking at. The album was re-released in 2001. I think the song may be older.
Yeah, 1965 to 1963, or what it's called as its
during
activity
Vietnam
years.
is what I'm hearing. So there's probably some like the of on the storm bit could be more like the various different trains of thought and world powers that marched all over planet Earth during the 60s as communism and capitalism spread across everywhere, and there were fights over borders and things, and one kind of could pull this into like a Vietnam allegory, I suppose. Like Riders on the Storm, the dude on the Apache with the machine gun.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say just a bunch of helis flying through like burning jungle foliage.
Yeah, exactly. Our lives will never end. That's what the soldiers are saying over and over again as they're desperately trying to get through their 2-year tour of hell. Where else can I go from here? An actor on a loan, someone, or that's Hendrix right there, right? Someone who had no desire, who wanted to be in some place like that and was something else, something he wanted to be doing but couldn't be doing. Why? Was conscripted. Some similar, which kind of ties back into the into this world we're thrown line, because again, if it's a mass conscription and that's your setting, I imagine it's a world where like the PC's first character level was developed at boot camp / the first major encounter, something like that.
Yeah. Everyone starts with a level of fighter. Where you go from there is up to you.
Pretty much.
All right. So aside from Achilles, does anyone else have anything to say?
He would really like to come in. I'm gonna go get my cat real quick.
Okay.
That see for the record, people, that was not my cat.
Is your cat no longer in heat? Is that why?
I don't know where she is right now. Somewhere.
There you go.
She's probably out getting that D.
No, she got out once, so she may have gotten it. And if she
This
has, she
video
can
will now get
sleep
more
outside.
views. There's a cat. There's a cat on the video.
There's a cat.
Achilles,
All right.
Come give a boop. Come on. I gotta move my windscreen.
That's a mess of whisker.
All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, comments, observations about it, then I think we're good. So, thanks for watching, everyone. Do you guys have anything you want to say before we sign off?
Achilles,
What do you guys think about psychedelic rock?
Yeah.
Do you also believe it's a terrible genre of music like I do? Because it is.
Man, you listen to Modest Mouse. You have no room, no talking.
They're one of the original folk bands.
Okay, he's calling psychedelic rock bad, but he listens to folk, so.
Yeah, I listen because folk is folk. It's existed long before psychedelic rock.
Well, so as
Psychedelic rock.
lots of things. All right. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Say bye, Achilles. Say bye.
Peace.
Psychedelic rock is bad.